Speaking of putting the nail in the coffin, we're going to transition a little bit here before we get into some rapid fire stuff at the end. We talked a lot of boxing today. We have purposely not talked a lot of the crossover scene, but it may be nail in the coffin time for crossover boxing, and I don't mean that in any sort of laughy, pointy down way. But
do you know what? The writing's on the wall, right? For a couple of reasons, right? Jake Paul had an unbelievable moment on Netflix where I personally hated the fight, but I appreciated the business that it did. And but let's not kid ourselves. Mike Tyson was hugely important to that moment.
For sure.
And the driving factor was people wondering if old man Mike Tyson, the most famous boxer living in the world, can knock out this young kid who, some people kind of knew, some people really knew. Jake Paul's fame does not compare to Mike Tyson's fame at all.
No.
But he definitely helped it. I'm not taking anything away from him. But let's not kid ourselves. Prior to that, he fought Mike Perry. That bombed on pay-per-view. He fought a couple of guys in hotels or whatever. No one cared about that. And now the pressure is on Jake Paul to be relevant again. The problem is Jake Paul is not the level of these world-class boxers. He can't just go in there and fight a Better Bear or someone like that. He needs competitive fights. It looks like Tommy Fury's next. Now, the issue with that is if Tommy beats him again, everyone's like, well, there you go. You fought, a decent pro who's, looked down upon by the majority of boxing, professional boxing fans. And you've been found out, all right, you beat an old man here and an old man there. They discredit what he's done. I'm not saying that. I think, considering he was a fucking YouTuber and he went and beat Anderson Silva,
it's crazy.
He's done fantastically well.
It's crazy.
But there's only so many notches on the ladder you can climb before it gets too hard. And I think Tommy Fury is going to be one that he needs to win to continue this journey. Otherwise, there's only one guy left, and that's the influencer boxing's guy, KSI, and he right now looks like he doesn't give a fuck about boxing.
Yeah.
So I think the both of them, I'm like, how long does this go on for? I don't know, man.
Yeah, I'm with you. For Jake, there's a certain amount of you need to get these fights done mentality. I think Tommy is right there, number one on the list, and I think that's the one that everybody wants to see. They're going to announce this week at some point, so we'll see what happens there. But man, yeah, it does feel like a changing of the guard. It honestly, to me, feels like KSI is about to retire. And you were there when he started. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts. He hasn't announced this officially, but if you're reading between the lines on this thing and you're looking at him and the way he's talking about fighting, and then you're looking at the way his team is talking about the way he approaches fighting, and it's just there's a lot of disconnect there from rumored, I should say, KSI's team maybe not putting him in tough fights because they don't see him taking the sport as seriously as he needs to put him in tough fights. KSI wanting big names, wanting tough fights, but having a lot of stuff that he's doing outside of boxing. And then you have the issues that come along with doing so many things outside of boxing and still trying to train. Fights get canceled, you get hurt, you get sick. This thing looks like a snowball rolling downhill. And like I said, you were there from the beginning, so kind of want your thoughts on this.
Well, it's good that you mentioned the beginning, because at the beginning there was an aggression, there was an anger, there was an angry young man who really wanted to prove a fucking point. Like, I am not what you think I am, and I think he proved that when he beat Logan. And I'm not sure I've seen the same level of fire since then. I think maybe we've seen a bit of it against Tommy Fury because he knew he was really up against a proper boxer
challenge,
in that fight.
Right?
Yeah. And he brought out the dog in that fight, got to give him credit, and he definitely made it really difficult for Tommy, and I think he held his own to some degree, like to a good degree in there.
For sure.
I think you could argue he won that fight if Tommy had been deducted that point.
I had it a draw.
Yeah, I had it at least a draw, to be honest with you. But the point is when he's talking about boxing compared to the way he used to talk about boxing, it's like, it's the energy is like flat. And obviously he's pulled out of 2 fights now, which, one was illness, one was an injury. But then he said, I'm going to reschedule, the Dylan Dennis fight. And now that's off. And,
that's not happening, dog. It ain't happening.
But no explanation. I don't know what's going on there. Do you know what I mean? And it's strange because a lot of his fans would have paid the travel, booked the hotels, and then to just go, it's being rescheduled, and then all of a sudden, I'm not doing it anymore. Like, obviously, we don't know why. Maybe there's a genuine reason. Obviously, I would assume there would be. But it just doesn't feel like that desperation is there. And like I know Dylan Dennis is hardly like his end goal, but if you want to fight a Jake Paul down the road, Jake Paul, the reason Jake Paul has elevated himself is because he stayed active and he's kept fighting and he's kept fighting, he's kept fighting. You really can't just roll out of bed and fight a Jake Paul. You need to be in there. You need to be getting roughed up a bit. You need to be, fighting for your life in spots. And even then, Dylan Dennis is certainly not a warm-up fight for a Jake Paul. You need probably another person in between that. So if you don't want to do the hard work to get the win, then the win is not going to come, and you should just probably fuck it off, to be honest with you. Which would be a real shame because he's built Misfits up. And I look at Misfits and the potential it has and the future potential it has, especially with how many influencers want to be a part of the scene and how many fun moments we've seen from the likes of Assault Pappy or my guy Joey Knight, for example. These budding boxers come out of nowhere. And, I get there's been mentions before about, the problem is KSI has to carry the show too much. And really, it's like, well, yeah, but he owns the company. It's not like, he is a boxer who is promoted by them. He owns the company as well. He's going to get, in the back end, when they eventually sell it or whatever, probably a good fucking reward for all of it.
For sure. Absolutely.
So there's a lot of reward in that for him. And it's not like he's managing the fighters day to day. And I think that he may, if he does hang up the gloves at his age in his early 30s, he might regret it because it is just... you can do content forever, but you can't fight forever. And you've got a chance here to make some really amazing moments. And personally, I've seen more than enough from his coaching team now to say, I just wish he was with someone else. I don't think that has been the best place for him for loads of reasons. From the way he's fighting, from the fact that they continue to let him train when he was ill, as you rightly pointed out on Twitter. That's
crazy.
Crazy idea that a coach should step in at that point. From, the interviews where they say we're ready for the top guys, and then behind the scenes, obviously, when we're putting all these fighters forward on the Misfit Small Council, it's all of them getting rejected, and they're deliberately trying to get the weakest possible opponent for him. There's millions of reasons I could give. I think if KSI had been at a boxing gym that were... there's many of them around the UK who could have taken him up levels. I don't think his boxing skill has gone up in the way that in the time period he's had to work on it could have done. And I think this jumping jack style, while it can work for him in sports, the basics should have been worked on a hell of a lot more. And it's giving the idea that maybe they don't want him getting exposed because that's them getting exposed, that we haven't really done the homework that we should have been doing with all this time we have. I think KSI should... if he does want to fight, I think he should be getting different coaching, personally. And this is no disrespect to them personally. They're probably lovely guys or whatever, but it's just my opinion.
Yeah, man, it didn't seem like you had a lot of thoughts there. I didn't know if I could get enough out of you.
You asked me for
I know.
I'll deliver for you. Bro.
Listen, here's the thing, too. I know that it's coming closer to the end, and the reason I know this, I'll just tell you now. I got asked about fighting Dylan Dennis, so I can tell, And no offense, but I got it.
Why is that? Because people are lining up fights, like a Dylan Dennis fight, and then last second, it's off.
That's what I was gonna say. I get it. Shout out to Mams Taylor. He really tried his best to make everything happen. But when these kind of things start to be like you're just throwing stuff at the wall, I'm not saying that I've seen it before.
Mams has his hands tied behind his back part of the time because Mams wants to make the bigger fights, but these coaches, they've been a problem in the past many times, and Mams ironically gets the blame, and behind the scenes, he's the one speaking.
He's the one that's going, trying to put it all out there. My respect for him has grown so much over this last year, knowing what he's got to deal with and all that. But Wade versus Dylan Dennis, how's it go? What are you saying?
I think you win that.
Let's go,
to be honest, again, I think obviously you and KSI have had little back and forths in the past. And I think that is a fight where the fans would love it. And obviously, you're just starting out and he's been doing this for a while and you may want to get a couple of more under your belt. God willing that this Misfits promotion carries on going, hopefully.
Well, hold on. What's the number? You know what I'm saying?
I think you're getting paid a lot because it's storylines, and this is what influencer boxing was built on. It's disagreements being settled in a ring. I would love to see that fight, and it would be a great matchup. But again, if his heart isn't in it and he doesn't want to do it, I completely respect that.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it.
Just fuck it off, bro. And do, the guy's doing amazing things elsewhere.
Yeah.
Fair play. But equally, I think there's a lot on the table at Misfits, and there's so much he could. He's not there yet, but Misfits could be able to fly without him. But again, in the UFC, it took a decade of the likes of Tito Ortiz, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, Rampage Jackson. They had character after character after character coming through. It wasn't built in a day. And when people are like, God, still reliant on KSI, I'm like, it's a baby. This thing is a baby, man. You got
2.5 years.
You got to give it time. It's not going to just happen overnight. And I think that's people who haven't been watching fighting as long as me coming out with stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll hope for the best, obviously, for crossover boxing, for KSI, for Misfits, for all that. But before I get you out of here, Jordan, I want to do